Welcome back to PSS, everybody. Today's video is a bit of a follow-up to our last video, which was showing how to get a decent heavy metal tone for free using free VST plugins. Today, we're going to be doing the same thing with a bass guitar, a craptastic $100 special great value bass guitar. It's actually not that bad. It's a Rogue, which is about one step above the, bundle Squire type stuff. So, this thing is definitely not high end. It's definitely not even mid end. It's pretty low end. It's not the bottom of the barrel, but it's not a fantastic instrument. It's better than it should be for the price, no doubt about that. But I've done a little bit of doctoring up to it to make it not look so miserable sitting next to my better instruments. But I've not gotten anything better because using free audio plugins, I'm actually able to make this sound pretty raw and pretty huge in a heavy metal mix. And I figured until I get some beefier equipment, there's really no sense in spending another $500 to $800 on a decent bass guitar. If you have a $500 to $800 bass guitar though, and you apply these same principles we're about to go over, it will sound even better though. So this tutorial, if anything, is just going to show that you can make anything sound pretty good, and if you have something decent, it's going to sound really good. So we'll hop into that. Little bit of forewarning before we get into this. I realize that YouTube compression and the way that I'm recording the live track when you're hearing it played back through Cubase is murdering the sound quality. So you're not able to actually hear how good it sounds. It's kind of killing the VST tone. You can refer back to the last video, listen to the outro, and you can get a better idea of what it actually sounds like. I'm also going to put in a raw WAV file link to my Google Drive again down in the description. We'll do the regular one as well as a, bass heavy, maybe even soloed version. That way you can tell exactly what it sounds like, and you don't have to, play the guessing game of, is that fizziness? Is that actually what the VST sounds like? Is that YouTube doing it? So yeah, you can listen to it, but don't rely on the sound alone until we're done, and then you can hear what we can make this piece of crap sound like. So let's hop into Cubase. So just like last time, before we get started, this video assumes that you own some type of audio workstation program of your choice, and you're able to get these VSTs where they need to go. I'll put the link in the description to my Google Drive account so you can grab those that we are using in this video, although you can find them for free around the internet. And once again, by no means do I take any credit for the creation of these. Talented people made these for free, and we should give them a huge applause for that. So just like last time, we're going to be using this little droney riff as our reference point. More importantly, this is what the bass guitar sounds like. As you can tell, this is a modern, distorted, grungy type bass. If you're not looking for that, you might want to look somewhere else. But this type of bass should fit in with pretty much any types of metal. And of course, you can tune the distortion and all that sort of thing to your liking. First things first, when you're recording the bass, be sure to select the type of, mix you want on your volume and tone knobs. For me, I have everything wide open. I want both pickups wide open, tone knobs wide open. For you, you may want to, limit it to certain pickups, certain tones, whatever. But, that's something that you can't change after the fact. So be sure, however you're recording it, that it is the way you like it when you do so. So when you record it, you should have something that sounds something like this, which is terribly quiet. So one method that you can actually do is, if you have a decent bass, that is just take this raw recording and play with the compression and EQ how you want, and just slap some distortion on the end of it on a separate track and call it a day. This is not an uncommon bass sound, especially for demos, and even some full productions. But for me, the raw bass sound is not high quality enough for me that I'm happy with that. So we're going to go a more traditional sound, and that's the route we're going to go. More traditional studio sound, going through a speaker cabinet, amps, all that good stuff. So the first thing you want to do is record your track, then you want to duplicate it. So you're going to have two of the exact same tracks on top of each other. I've got them labeled bass low and bass high. Now, some people I've seen ask before in variations of this method, they'll say, well, isn't there going to be phasing issues, whatnot? No, because this is literally the exact same track. This isn't, and we don't want to record stuff. This isn't a re-recording. This is the same audio file as that. So all you're doing is splitting it up. It's like reamping a guitar. It's nothing different. So we'll start with our low bass. Your general insert signal chain is going to be a gate, a compressor, a drive pedal, some type of amp, and some type of speaker cabinet emulation. I have mono to stereo on because, like I said last time, my audio interface is set up for mono, but when it routes to Cubase, it does one hard stereo, and I just need that to do it easily for for this video. I can do it a little bit different settings in the device setup and make it to where I don't need it. But if you don't need it, don't worry about that mono to stereo. So first things first, we're going to throw on a gate to clean up the stop and start. Cleans up the attack a little bit. I'm going to have to change this volume constantly throughout this video, I have a feeling. So yeah, that cleans it up a bit. The reason it's so low for me is I have the amp sim cranked, I believe. Possibly the most important plugin, especially if you're just going in with the dry, raw bass signal, is the compressor. Because, I pick, and most heavy metal genres and songs, you're going to want a picked bass. But even if you are picking, you're going to have differences in your hard and soft picking. You're going to have differences between strings. So this kind of levels it out a little bit. And you can hear the higher string is a little bit softer, even with a compressor on. So my gate and compressor settings are like so. You can tune them to however best matches your music. Really quick release on the gate for this type of stuff, and I go about a ratio of 4.0 for the compressor, leave pretty much everything else the same as default. Of course, this is Cubase's built-in stuff. Most of your audio workstation programs are going to have their own built-in gate and compressors. If not, you can download the REA compressor, gate, it's got EQ, there's a bunch of stuff. So I'll throw that in the description as well that you can download if yours does not support it. This ratio is a lot higher than I normally would do for stuff like a guitar, but for a bass, you want that constant thump in the background, so that's why I turn it up. Now, like I said, for some people, that might be a wonderful bass tone. To me, given the budget nature of the bass I'm using, it's barely passable, and I could probably play with the EQ and stuff. I didn't have that deactivated, so even that was playing with. So here's it actually raw. Not a whole lot of difference there, but if you're happy with that bass sound, you can just leave this part of your track completely, just compressor, gate, and be done with it. For me, I need a little bit more crunch and roar on the low end, so we're going to revisit our old friend TSB-1, which is another Ignite Amps product. Unlike the guitar, I have the drive up a little bit. I have the tone almost, 100% down. For the guitar, we'd have it here. For the bass, I don't want too much, trebly coming out, at least on the low track. Level all the way up. We don't need any sweep. And given the type of bass amp we're using, I do have the boost engaged. On the back, 2x oversampling, regular input, and the boost is all the way up by default. So that'll give us, quite a bit of more roar on the low end. Gives you a little bit of fuzz, a little bit of boost going into whatever next inserts that you put in. So here is my favorite bass amp plugin. I'm an Ignite Amps fan, if you can't tell. So for the switches, I like deep, I like shape. You can turn these on and off depending on how you're using it. I throw gain all the way up, bass all the way up, mid, generally around the middle, sometimes a little bit more depending on the application. For heavy stuff, I think it sounds pretty good in the middle. Same with treble. Balance doesn't do a terrible amount, but it will add a little bit more treble to it. From what I can tell, when you crank it up, we'll listen to it momentarily. And this is probably the reason why I have to have the volume over here so much turned down. But generally with these VSTs, if there's no power amp setting, I find that cranking the volume does a very similar thing to get it to be more saturated sounding. So I don't know if this one is actually any different, but I just do it in case. Oversampling 4x, you can play with that as you wish. So here's what it sounds like with boost pedal and amp engaged. A little loud. Sounds pretty dirty and raw to me. Now, like I said, you can play with some of these different settings here. Here's without the pedal at all. You know, it sounds like a pretty classic Slayer type metal bass. Still sounds good, but without the boost, still not bad. So as you can see, the balance will roll off some of the bass. You can crank it however you like. I'll throw it down a little bit more to get more bass out of it, and we'll roll on to the cabinet. So we're back here with Nat IR, and I'm doing a bit of a blend. I believe this one we're 100%ing on an Ampeg 8x10 cabinet. So this, once again, just like the guitars, you can mix however you'd like if you have a certain cabinet that you love the sound of. So this is what it sounds like with that. Now that's starting to sound like a real lively bass. And like I said, if you like another one of these, you can blend it a little bit. For the low end, I think these Ampegs, these impulse responses sound fantastic. I'll throw those in the VST folder as well, and you can, you know, route them to the necessary areas, folders on your computer. Finally, I roll off for EQ about 7,000 hertz. You can go even lower if you want your tracks to be even more separated. And I bumped it up a little bit, about 200 hertz. You can play with whatever frequencies you want in and out. This type of bass sound, I'm trying to blend a little bit with the 8-string guitars to create this wall of sound. If you want more separation, you can take out frequencies and whatever that you don't like, and possibly, you know, there may be another cabinet that you like that achieves that separation more to your hearing. So here it is all together. Without. Not a terribly, different effect, but it just keeps some of those higher frequencies in tame. So that's the first half of the bass tone. And for some things, that may be good enough. It's got a little bit of slop in it, but it's still tight enough that it could probably stand on its own as a bass tone. However, I like to have one more track. So here's what bass high will sound like. This is optional, like I said, but to me, I think these two sound better together. It's going to be generally the same layout as you can see. It's just going to be focused more on the upper frequencies. So we'll start one by one. Again, from the compressor, all of this I have exactly the same from the other track. The TSB-1 is where I start changing stuff up. So let's compare it to the low track. So on the low, we got a little bit of drive. On this one, I turned the drive all the way up. For the tone, we got a little bit of tone, turn the tone all the way up here, and same with sweep, same with boost. basically, I want this input to be as dirty as possible. I mean, by itself, it sounds terrible. So I just want it to be as distorted and nasty sounding as I can get it. For the amp, it's fairly similar to the other one we have. And you could probably leave it exactly the same and just have the boost pedal in the back tame the sound how you want it. But got the volume cranked like I did last time. I cranked the mid. A little bit more treble sometimes is nice, but the cabinet impulse response handles that for me, so I don't have to do a whole lot. Balance, generally pretty close, but you can crank that as well if you want more treble. So this is what it sounds like with those two engaged. That is just disgusting. Super raw. And if you're happy with that, if you're happy with the way they mix... you can always play with how, you can always play with the mix, the levels. And if that's good enough for you, good enough. I like to add another, cabinet emulation just to get it more realistic sounding, how it would sound live through, real speaker cabinets. So this is what it would sound like. And I forgot the damn EQ again. Sorry about that. It isn't going to be terribly different. Here it is with speakers. Without... takes away some of the harshness right off the bat, and it makes it go from, just pure crap to actually sound like a real bass guitar, something that it could produce. For the EQ, I roll off at, around 7,000 again, and I also roll off at some of the lower frequencies. Now, some people I've seen them go up to like 500 and get rid of all the bass stuff and let the low track handle that. But I like a little bit more dirt in the bottom to, kind of fuse with the 8-string sound. It's whatever you want to do here. It's just depending on what type of distortion you like to hear. So here's without the EQ. And with. So that's what I wanted out of the distortion. This isn't nearly as grainy or dirty as I have heard for some people what they like on their bass tones. And if you are using a clean, direct signal on your low track, then you might want to go a little bit more dirty and, high frequency on your high track. Just depends, depending on what sound you want. But in the end, you should get something that sounds roughly like this. As you can see, the beauty of this split track method is that you can, adjust the higher end how you want and how you want it to mix with the low track and as well as with the 8 strings as well, because you can do this the first time and it might sound perfect, but then once you get higher end, instruments in it, it may poke out too much, maybe it might be covered up entirely. So I believe this is going to be really loud in the mix, but let's just try it out and see if I can get it close again, just, blind. So here's just with the drums. And with guitars. I think that's a pretty healthy, balance of both. And of course, you can listen to it and scrutinize as you see fit. But, it's going to come out to be something like this. And without the bass. Of course, I have the bass pretty powerful right now because that's what I'm listening for. But a lot of people tend to forget that modern metal is really held down by a solid, disgusting sounding bass guitar. And, people often are surprised about how thin some guitar tones sound by themselves until you put them in the mix. So, this isn't a very important step, and it's not something to gloss over easily, but even if you do have a piece of crap bass like I do, you can still make it sound fairly decent. So, for those of you that, are getting into songwriting or recording demos, don't think all hope is lost. You could spend less than $200 easy and be able to have something that sounds really good with free stuff once again. So, hope this was helpful to you guys. Once again, go check out the guitar VST one if you missed that for a little bit more tips and tricks on how to balance your mid-range instruments. And we'll see you next time, hopefully with drums, if we get to it in time. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.